If your organization is ready to enhance cyber resilience, we have important insights for you. The Level Blue Futures Report 2024 sheds light on how rapid computing changes affect IT visibility. Our research reveals that while IT leaders see positive outcomes, 85% acknowledge increased risk. In this report, we identify the barriers to cyber resilience, the challenges impacting cybersecurity, and the business context that reveal operational issues. You'll also discover what's on the horizon and 5 essential steps for prioritizing cyber resilience. Get your complimentary copy of this crucial research today by visiting securityweekly.com/level blue. Cybersecurity simplified. ThreatLocker implements a least privileged approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits, and ensures 24/7, 365 protection for your organization. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. All right, gentlemen, let's get into this week's articles. I love this first article. So Innovation Sandbox, huge event at RSA conference every single year. RSA has announced that the top 10 finalists will each receive a $5 million investment under a safe note, an uncapped safe note, which I think is just absolutely interesting. Obviously, Crosspoint, who bought the RSA conference, is backing this.
Yep.
But boy, that just pushes the competition up a notch, doesn't it?
I mean, now you're throwing money in the game. Of course it's going to step up the game. I love it. I love it. You want to know what? Let's do this. I mean, the article actually showed how much these companies have raised in funding since inception. $16.4 billion in investment have gone into these companies, the top 10 finalists. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. So yeah, let's bring money to the table. Let's get these competitions rolling. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I bet there's a few that have gone through this process said, man, I wish that was available a few years ago.
I know, right? It's all about timing.
It is. But because we just did the security money segment, I had to pull this article in because it came out this week. And I'm like, this is awesome. So 50 million is how much Crosspoint Venture is going to put up for the 10 finalists if you make it to the final Innovation Sandbox. So I can't let the competition begin. That's awesome. Well, awesome news.
I mean, they're seeing the benefits of what comes out of it, and I'm sure they're going to get a piece of the action coming out of it too. So they know it's going to make them money.
Oh yeah, that's what
benefits
they want,
everybody.
They want a piece of the action, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. Yeah, one way to grow your RSA funding portfolio.
Yeah, get the cream of the crop.
Yeah, heck yeah. You're in for $5 million for all of them. That's go.
That's it.
Yeah, that's not out of them being just happy-go-lucky and beneficial, right?
That's right.
There's an ulterior motive to there. It's like a guaranteed investment. Yeah,
all day long.
Exactly. Yeah. Why not? All right. So let's get serious. It's time to split the CISO role if we are to save it.
BS.
My Lord.
I don't know. Like we've talked about this.
Did we go in a time machine? I read the article. I'm like, are we in a time machine? Are we going back to where it used to be like?
Functionally, okay. So I didn't. State of Wisconsin. Yeah, I'm not buying it. Right. So David, who wrote the article, CIO for State of Wisconsin, former. I want to know how many deputy CISOs the state of Wisconsin had. I'm guessing not a lot. But even coming from enterprise companies, like you've got to be at the very pinnacle to have multiple deputy CISOs. Like it doesn't work. Like we already have the role split out. Like, look, I don't know about you, Jason, but like you're functionally running it. I've got 5 lieutenants who are working for me, right? Maybe 6, but
100%.
Okay. So out of that, I probably only got one who's named the deputy CISO, but the others are running functional areas. And this is already well handled. Like, I don't know where the funding this guy thinks is coming from. If I went to the board and said, I need 6 deputy CISOs, no. Like the role isn't can we get a seat at the table
take the
first?
titles out of it. The responsibilities already exist in that organization, right? And to be honest with you, the deputy CISO portion was just the stepping stone to get everything transferred elsewhere. Right?
Yeah.
That was the stepping stone. I mean, the ultimate game that he had was transition risk over to the CFO or chief risk officer, transition the technology portion of it to the CTO, and then the CISO owns security operations. That's the end game that he was looking at. And for me, I'm like, oh, time machine.
Yeah, but that means so stick with that for a second. All right, so the CISO's now running security operations. Doesn't that just make him a technology leader at the end of the day?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. This is
right?
time machine. Time machine.
Yeah.
What we lose is we lose
businesses.
We lose the unified. We use the unified responsibility and accountability. We lose the unified vision. We get deeper bureaucracy and complexity. Everything starts going back into silos the way it used to be. You can't manage a centralized budget, so it's going to cost more money. And then your influence is blown to hell, because if you think the CEO in this model is going to have you report to him, you're freaking nuts.
That makes sense because the CIO wrote the article.
Right.
Right. Like
Right.
this isn't CISOs leading for CISOs saying like what the optimal structure looks like. This is a CIO saying like, hey, my role's being potentially democratized across a bunch of different stuff. How do I maintain? Oh, let me come up with a different strategy for one of my functional areas of tech.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's got the biggest target on the back? All right, let's look at the CISO.
Right. Because if we want the CISO to be a true business leader executive, they should own the cybersecurity risk management compliance component.
Absolutely.
Right? You almost give security operations to the CIO and CTO.
Yeah.
Go, here, you maintain that, and I'll tell you whether it complies or manages our risk framework.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
Right?
That article is a DeLorean.
Well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We opened the door to the DeLorean with that article. That's what we did.
Or the hot tub time machine, one or the other.
Hot tub time machine, yeah. Well, pick your decade.
Well, I got a hot tub out back. I don't have a DeLorean
Oh my
in the
God,
garage.
like that's
so.
the episode we need to do is the three of us in a hot tub. Yeah.
I got cigars, baby. Whenever you guys are
Nice.
ready.
Love it. Love it.
Bring the whiskey.
I got that too. Don't worry. You don't need to bring anything. Just bring yourselves. Oh gosh. All right. So that ties into this next article. CISOs look to establish additional leadership roles, right? So we just got through this, right?
Yeah. Let's have opposite sides of the pillar here.
Exactly. Oh gosh. That's why I had to throw these two articles back to
no
back.
doubt. I mean, listen, it's all about our ability to partner in the organization, influence the organization, and move us ahead, right? I mean, that's the whole point of why we've been fighting and fighting and fighting for so long to do what we do and get that seat at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that made me laugh so hard. Okay. Next one, CISO's tips for building a culture of cybersecurity. Now, this is an interview. Anahi Santiago, she's Chief Information Security Officer. Yep. So I listened to the whole thing. Now, you have to listen to almost the whole thing before you get into the culture tips, because they talk a little bit about home medicine, home healthcare, and some stuff. They get a little sidetracked. So you gotta get through like into the 6-minute mark, and it's 8.5 minutes.
Yeah,
or so
she was
she
speaking on two different topics at the conference or event that she was at. Right. And one of them was about like the operational technology and the remote workforce and things of that nature. And the other side was the culture piece, right? So yeah, the beginning, the person doing the interview, asked about the operational technology and the healthcare technology side of the aisle first. But once you get through that first half, they start really getting into the culture side. And you know what? I listened to everything that she was saying, and I said, wow, Business Security Weekly is actually, we've influenced so much over the course of the last 6 years or 7 years that people are parroting what we've been saying for years now. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yep. Starts at the top with the CEO, duh. And it's everyone's responsibility. Of course it is. Like
you need executive team alignment, right?
Yep. One-on-ones with your execs to get executive team alignment.
How do you build relationships in the organization, right? Align to their mission of the organization, have one-on-ones with the executive team, get buy-in from the CEO, enable, your strategy with the strategic mission of these departments, and figure out how you get alignment there, right? So it's all the things we've been talking about.
Yeah, and she even talks about making it personal, connecting with the care workers
Yes.
on how important it is from a security perspective at home, because this is one of the areas we've talked about so much that we still have not done a good job at, which is why just basic security awareness and training doesn't work.
Yep.
It's not personal enough,
Right.
right?
Make it relate.
Until it relates to me, my home life, and my family, I'm not really going to take it seriously. And she talks about this because we've talked about this as well. If it doesn't impact me personally, I'm not going to pay attention.
Right.
But when it does, and if you can make that connection, it'll change the way you address security both at work and at home, because it will be ingrained in you because you're thinking, oh, this is how I do it at home. This is how I do it at work. Exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good one out of that one. All right. When your high standards derail your success, not that I'm saying I have high standards, but I probably do. I just thought this was a really interesting article about how to manage yourself when you have really high standards and you're not achieving them, right? Like, this could be very difficult for certain leaders because they're expecting this, they can't get there. How do you react? And this article lays out kind of how do you react?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great article. I mean, you guys know, I mean, I spent some time in the United States Marine Corps. You want to talk about high standards? Mm-hmm. My Lord, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to get into positions where you're not achieving what you're set out to do. And how do you pull an audible? How do you adapt and overcome, right? And that was the key in the United States Marine Corps. How do you adapt and overcome? We're always going to be faced with challenges. We're always going to be faced with outcomes that we're shooting for that we're not achieving on the timeline we want, or, to the quality that we want. But how do you adapt? How do you overcome? And I love it. Take a step back. You have to know where you need to be adapting, right? So that way you can overcome, and then really rally the troops around it, right? You have to rally the troops. And a lot of it from a leadership perspective is that introspection. And I think that's the pause, right? Mm-hmm. Because, you guys, we've talked about it before, extreme ownership, Jocko Willink book, right?
Yep.
As a leader, you have to own it. You have to own the accountability 100%. And you have to be driving to those results, and you have to help your team get there. What were you not doing to help drive the team? And how can you guys adapt and overcome?
Well, I think it's also I looked at it from it's same but different perspective too. Is I know a lot of people who who work for me in leadership roles, or even in myself in some cases, right? Where like you have these expectations of how you would do something.
Yep.
And the expectation of the actual individual contributors getting the job done aren't the same, right? And it's that difference, that delta of understanding, hey, look, this may not be the way that I would do it, right? Or the standards that I have, but it's getting functionally done. It's enough like to do what we need to do, and like to stress out and to get them over that hump to get to where you are isn't functionally either one ever going to happen or be productive. And so like, how do you mitigate your expectations, your understanding, your standards, right? What you drive to realize that isn't what we need to do in this place. And you're getting in the way of yourself, right? Like,
100%.
Yeah. Just step back and say like,
hey, lot of
we only got to get across the line. We don't have to get across the line with world record results, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's I kind of took that in the number 2 where it says nowhere to be flexible, right? Yep. My brain took that and said, know when you need to let go and delegate and allow things to happen and empower your team to go do good things. Because if you're a leader who micromanages, that's not scalable. You're never going to grow. You're never going to be able to grow your company, to grow your team. And you're in the minutia. And by the way, there aren't quality or really any employees who want to have a leader who micromanages all the time.
Right.
So you're going to lose the faith of your team, right? And at the end of it, you have to be flexible and know that you can go delegate, even if it's not perfect.
Continual defeats. Like if you set up your team where you're just having defeat after defeat after defeat, it gets defeating, right?
Yes.
Like you're setting up that mental thing of like, man, we just can't get this done. Whereas if you take a step back, reestablish what the goal line is and say, okay, let's set up some small wins, right? And those wins then start to catapult you into, you'll potentially even see that the standards do raise because people realize that they can have success and that's beneficial, and the feeling they get from it and the team effort, like that all comes out in the way you handle that.
100%.
Yeah, and that's why 4 is very interesting, which is engaging in productive conflict, because as leaders, sometimes you have to have productive conflict. You have to kind of reset expectations and or direction, especially in a startup environment. Because Ben, you and I are in very similar situations, right? We're in startup mode, right? There is a high standard for building a product, but you have so many resources, so much capacity to get stuff done. And sometimes expectations are just like way misaligned. So you have to engage in productive conflict, go, no. These are the things that are important. This is where we have to focus. Because if we don't do these, then nothing else can happen, right? Organizations that can't have that productive conflict and try to do everything are going to fail pretty miserably because they're not focused on what they need to execute on. And I think that's just an important part that people have to understand, especially in very dynamic organizations like a startup.
And there's a science to that too, though, because there's sub bullets underneath that you need to think about, right? Because one of them is there's a time for productive conflict. There's a place for productive conflict, because you may not want to be going at it in a meeting full of your peers or colleagues.
Right.
It's the one thing I've always called the 11th commandment. The 11th commandment is you may have a disagreement with someone and be smart enough to take it offline. And the 11th commandment is we're going to go walk in this room together. We're going to go hash this out and come up with a consensus. And then we're walking out of this room, teammates side by side on the same page with the same mission. That's the 11th commandment. That's what leaders have to do.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes it has to happen multiple times throughout even a given year. Like it just does, because the market dynamics are changing so fast. Things are moving. You have to continually kind of look at yourself, look at where you're going, kind of look back at the mirror and go, wait, are we doing the right stuff? Should we go in a different direction? Have to.
Yep.
Yeah, and you have to have people around that can challenge you for that, right?
Right.
Like if everybody's on the same page all the time, something's not right.
Big time. You don't ever want a team or a company full of yes men or yes women. That's the sheeple attitude. We don't want sheeple, right? We want folks who are going to challenge the process, push us as leaders to our next level. That's what we want.
Right. Yes. Because it makes us better as leaders and better as a company. Yeah. Personal leadership in cyber risk. Top 3 traits that deliver enterprise results. So this is interesting. This is talking about leadership in the context of cyber risk. So we don't always see leadership articles that have a risk component. They're usually general leadership articles. Right. This one's very specific to cyber. The top 3 traits necessary for an individual with a leadership position in cybersecurity to deliver enterprise level results are strategic planning, social intelligence, and resilience.
So I'm gonna start off and say, just take a step back. I'm gonna start off and say this article was written. But wait a minute. This article was written by a graduate student at the University of Albany. Kudos to merit, right? Because for someone to say you need a risk component and here's how you can be an effective leader in the risk category of cybersecurity, which we've said for so long, learn how to manage risk. Are you going to report to somebody who does? This is a graduate student. Kudos to merit. Seriously, right? For identifying that and putting that out there. The one thing I will say, though, is there's a foundation that was missing, and in nowhere in the article did I see the word relationship. Anywhere.
Right.
Anywhere did I see the word relationship. Strategic planning without relationships, you're going to fail. Social intelligence, without using it to build relationships, you're going to fail. Key pieces is the ability.
Doesn't that factor into, like you called it out at the beginning, like, again, kudos to merit. A graduate student, like practical experience, lacking, right? Like, and that's where the practicality 100%. Of experience comes in, that you need to understand how this stuff actually works when rubber meets road.
100%. And this is the missing piece to the article that I want. If Merit listens to Business Security Weekly, awesome, right? Talk about relationship building, because that's what's going to fill your toolbox now with a lot of really good tools that are going to have a foundation.
Yeah. Because these 3 are very interesting. Don't get me wrong, but you're right. How do you get teamwork if you can't build relationships?
Agreed.
right?
How do you get trust within the organization? How do you get the CEO, the board of directors, your colleagues on the executive level to trust you?
Yeah,
it's the emotional intelligence side that's allowing you to build relationships, gain trust, build influence. That's how you move the needle. Yes, you need these traits, but the most important one that you're going to have is your ability to build relationships and gain trust, build influence.
We just rewrote the article. We got relationships at the bottom and then 3 pillars on top.
There you go. There you go.
There we go. That's what we do, folks. We can pick them apart as best as anybody else can. All right, last article for the day. Which hills are worth dying on? This is talking about whistleblowing. And this is really interesting. It talks about kind of the challenges of corporate kind of responsibility versus personal responsibility, and when those, how do you manage those? If it's personally outside of your ethics, but from a legal or corporate perspective, it's really not. Like, where do you let go? It was just some interesting dynamics in this article.
Totally, and I think that's the key to understand, right? Is that whistleblowing is a legal tool meant for serious issues, right? Serious. And that's, you don't want to pull that tool out of the toolbox every 3 weeks to complain about stuff you don't like in the company.
Right.
These are serious legal issues that you need to bring up if you're going to be a whistleblower. And then the dichotomy of it, what they talk about is, when does my own personal ethics and how do I, handle that if it's an ethical concern for me? And folks have their own view of the world, and the direction of the company may not necessarily align with the ethical side of what you believe in, and you have to make a good decision, because nobody wants the employee that's constantly crying wolf or complaining, or if you don't align with the company's values, you can leave the company at the end of the day, right?
Right.
So there's really there's that difference. Is it a legal issue and a whistleblowing call, or is it just you don't align with the mission, and vision of the company or where the company's headed?
And it's time for me to look for another job and go find another career. Yeah.
Yeah. And the example that they give here, right? Product manager, manufacturing company, they want to change checks, but they're not required. They're not legally required. Like, for me, I don't know. If it doesn't align with your personal ethics, then figure out when you need to leave the company. But that's not a whistleblowing event, right?
No. I mean, to take it to the extreme, I mean, if I was an environmentalist to the hilt, would I go work for a fracking company? Probably not. Right. So it's like, you gotta take those things into consideration. What's the company you're working for? And does it align to your own values?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this is part of things you should be thinking about in the interview process. Like, does the company's values and culture align to my personal values and beliefs? Right. And if not, it's probably not a great place to go work. Now, you may not know all of that up front. This was a change that happened partway through. Okay, maybe they don't align. Maybe you strongly don't believe in the changes they made. You have the opportunity to go change jobs. But
of course.
Is it a whistleblower event? That's where you kind of that's that crossing line.
Exactly. That's the line, right? And at the end of the day, we're talking 2 different extremes. There's going to be middle there where that's where in an organization you want to have your trusted colleagues, your trusted advisors that, hey, this is a concern of mine. I'm a little worried about XYZ. Can I get your input or because we went both sides of the aisle. We went extreme on one side and extreme on the other. Some folks may just have a little battle going on, and it's okay to have trusted colleagues and folks that you can go to and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me out? Let's talk through it.
Yep. Yeah.
To help you better identify whether or not there's misalignment.
Yep. Agreed.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you everyone for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.